to another episode of the DailyFlip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're talking about the shutdown and the main battle that's going on and the language that's being used around it, how it's being twisted, even by people who claim to be on the right. And I would say probably are on the right, but it's an interesting world of right-wing or conservative commentators and personas nowadays. With that, we'll actually get to our daily debate. When the government says that they're actively trying to get back on track, do you believe the current Republican administration? I don't actually know if I do or not. It's kind of it seems to be a win-win. It seems to be that Trump wins either way, but I'm curious what you think about this one. Throw it down in the comment section. Love to hear what you have to say. The PR is different than the actual yearning of the people in power. So what do you think? Because maybe I'm just a little bit too cynical. With that, let's actually jump into our article today that comes from Breitbart. And the headline reads, quote, White House Democrats demanding $200 billion for illegal aliens over a decade to reopen the government, end quote. Now, when you first hear that term, illegal aliens, what comes to mind? Because I heard some pushback today from someone who is more conservative, saying actually when the Republicans keep talking about how these people are here in this country illegally, how they are not residents of the United States, but they are here illegally because they are coming underneath the asylum process. They may have crossed the border illegally, but that doesn't mean they don't have a right to stay here because they're undergoing their asylum hearings, essentially. And I thought to myself, well, that's an interesting way to frame it, but never in my life did I believe the framing that illegal migrants meant that they are here and it's illegal for them to be here. How I always perceived it was a method for which they cross the border, and therefore making any other subsequent justifications, reasoning, rationale illegitimate. If you cross into a country without any sort of preparation, without filing through the proper process, especially in the case of the United States, we do not have to grant you asylum. Now, of course, I think everybody should be given the right and the grace that when you do cross the border, if say you're running away from a terrorist gang in Italy and you make your way across to the French side of the Alps, and you get to France and you say, hey, these guys are chasing me. I want to seek asylum. I know I crossed illegally. You don't always have the luxury of applying ahead of time, but a majority of the people who seemed to come here during Biden's administration did it intentionally. They had other states that they could have stayed in, but even then, even in my analogy, if France wanted to say, no, you didn't come over the border the right way, they have every right to do it. I'm going to be hating it. I'm not going to be enjoying it. I'm going to be sad that they're going to throw me back across the border. But the second I get back across the border, I'm going to apply to do it the right way. And in this case, once again, the people should not be given the grace of an asylum process if they didn't even file for asylum before they got here. If they simply got across the border and then used that foothold as a way to stay in the country. That's just my opinion. I think that, once again, the illegal aliens language, the illegal migrants language, speaks not to whether or not they're allowed to be here because they have a legal reason for being here, but simply it speaks to the fact that they got here illegally, because you can't just cross the border. It is already in statute that you cannot simply cross the border without going through a port of entry and being documented in some way, shape, or form. And whether that means your actual documentation you bring from your other country or the actual move across the border itself is quote-unquote documented. So with that, let's actually get into the meat of what Breitbart's getting into now that we've defined our terms. Quote, Democrats are seeking, we already said this, the $2 billion. Quote, the memo circulated to the media on Wednesday accuses Democrats of spurring a government shutdown over their advocating for billions in American taxpayer-funded health care benefits for illegal aliens and other foreign nationals. The memo begins, quote, the Working Families Tax Cut Act, signed into law by President Trump, contains the most important America First health care reforms ever enacted. That is something that you probably didn't see coming out of the Republican Party within the last 10 years. Now, Trump's in office, you see it a little bit more. Quote, the policies represent a comprehensive effort to address waste, fraud, and abuse and to strengthen the healthcare system for the most vulnerable Americans, ensuring that taxpayer dollars are focused on American citizens and do not subsidize healthcare for illegal immigrants. And this is, how should I say, a hot topic because Democrats fundamentally disagree that these people do not have the right to retain benefits from us while they are here waiting for their asylum hearing to end. But Breitbart, whether you agree with them or not, Breitbart makes an interesting point in comparison here. It compares the funding that they're trying to get for the illegal migrants and non-citizens. Now, these are all people that, in this case, this money is appropriated towards people that are, I don't believe there are any exceptions to this. There could very well be, and I could be wrong, but from my understanding, it is for people who are here under the asylum laws. Basically, they have a legal reason for being here, even if you don't agree with it. They compare the $193 billion in funding to a similar program, which is the Children's Health Insurance Program for $195 billion. So they're trying to directly say here that that $195 billion could go towards these children health insurance programs rather than the migrants and non-citizens. Now, that is not necessarily an ingenuous kind of comparison because the money for the children's healthcare insurance program isn't being stripped anyway. But it's not to say that the point doesn't stand, which is maybe that future cuts could go towards those children's healthcare insurance programs. I doubt it would happen because, like I said, it's already been appropriated to be cut out. It's kind of like saying that, oh, well, the budget's going to they're trying to propose this amount of change to the budget when compared to the baseline budget right now, when they were getting the Trump tax cuts passed, that they're saying, oh, well, compared to right now, it will only go up 300. But when those end, the presumption is that we have to start pay for those as well because we wouldn't have paid for them before, which is fair enough, but it is a little bit disingenuous framing. Now, what else does this article go on to talk about? Quote, particularly, Democrats are hoping to end the Trump administration's closing of the so-called California loophole, where the sanctuary state utilized a loophole to ultimately provide illegal aliens with Medicare benefits. The WFTCA closes the loophole through which nearly 80% of federal savings are derived from ending California's exploitation of past policy, end quote. So the question beyond the question is this a framing of an issue that will actually help the Republicans or the Democrats? And I think at the end of the day, I'm thinking a little bit on my feet because I thought about it earlier and I didn't really care. I didn't put enough weight into it. But I think that the Democrats will win out on this one. Why? Why is that? One, someone brought up an example that Trump loves to be the one saying, hey, I gave you all this stuff. And he wants the American people back on his side. But Trump's argument is an argument to his base. It is to his base and maybe at the utmost limitations of people who don't think that these illegal migrants should have health care. It would be about 60% of the population that is on the same page as him when it comes to his immigration policy. Whereas health care benefits, even though there are many, many strong Republicans who would not be in favor of it simply because of the socialized healthcare part of it, or even the immigrant part of the population, I think that is also in the most general language that they're using, which is they're trying to strip healthcare benefits. That PR battle is more likely to win, and I think the split would be 70-30, if not 80-20, just on language alone. Now, does that mean that both of those policies are supported, those amounts, those percentages that I gave? No, not necessarily, because you start presenting the details to people, and people are going to get sketched out. They're not going to like it. They're going to hate it. American people tend to love to hate a whole bunch of different legislation and changes and taxation or schemes to tax. So in the end, I think that though both will be unpopular policy-wise, that the Democrats have a better message here. They have a better way to get Donald Trump back to the table. And they can argue that they're doing this on principle, that Donald Trump took away these tax credits and now we're trying to get them back, which once again actually pegs it back on the Trump administration. They're able to double point here, which is Trump took the government into shutdown because he wasn't willing to give these people health care, and they wouldn't have even been a problem in the first place if Trump hadn't gotten rid of these tax credits. I think that's an effective message. I don't agree with it, but it doesn't mean that they can't win out. I don't have to agree with any side in order to understand where they're coming from and how effective they can be. And I think Trump's message, I think the Republicans' message is also pretty fair, which is, hey, just come back to the table. That's what Democrats have argued for years, and sometimes they've gotten away with it. And the one that they really didn't was when Joe Biden really put himself in the middle of the negotiations for the shutdown. But hey, what would I know? I'm just a random guy on the sidelines. But if you agree with my opinion, you disagree, throw it down in the comment section. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Also, if you want to read the article mentioned today, it will be linked in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there you can find the podcast on Spotify, Podcast, Podfine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip. So, with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die,